The French welfare state offers benefits such as daycare, healthcare, well-funded schools, pensions, and a 35-hour work week. France has been viewed as leading the way among social welfare states. As the centrist labor leader Nicolas Notet wrote, "The French social model rests at the heart of the European social model. People from other continents expect that France will maintain the flame of this great social model." The 35-hour work week is a fantastic concept for those who actually have a job. But if a person has a full-time job in France, he's relatively lucky. Unemployment has hovered around 10% for the past 20 years. But those who are most affected by French unemployment are youth. Youth unemployment remains an almost constant 30%. For college-age adults just like us, France is not a great place to be right now, and it hasn't been since the 1990s. I have been studying the youth unemployment problem in France for the past 2 years. For my senior project, I spent an entire semester delving into research on this issue. The unemployment crisis is devastating the youth population, and although the government has made minor attempts to suppress the issue, the reforms have not been sufficient to solve the problem. We'll take a look at what the unemployment crisis really means, what the French government has done to address the issue, and what President Nicolas Sarkozy wants to do to solve it. Let's define what the unemployment crisis is. The unemployment crisis means that, according to Timothy Smith's 2004 book, France in Crisis, there has not been full employment since 1975. Youth unemployment is at 30%, while youth underemployment is at a staggering 75%. Yet the economy is doing well. In his 2006 article in Dissent, Cohen states that the Paris Bourse, the stock market, reached its highest point in 5 years in March 2006. Imagine that 3 out of 10 of your friends are unemployed, while about 4 more of them are working in jobs that are very beneath their abilities. That's what it's like in France. With 9.5 million people at or below the poverty level, homelessness is a real problem. According to the UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights in 2001, there were 8,000 homeless people in Paris, 200,000 homeless people throughout the country, and 2 million people were living in inadequate housing. For homeless people under the age of 25, conditions are even worse. NAB, in his 2006 article on Social Policy, reports that laws dictate that landlords must have proof that a tenant earns 3 times as much as their rent in order for them to even be eligible for housing. This totally makes housing totally unaffordable for most of the youth because most of the youth are underemployed. Young people are leaving France, causing a significant brain drain. According to Go and Morin's 1997 article in the European Sociological Review, in France, people are entering the workplace more often as manual or clerical workers and less often at managerial level positions. But elsewhere in the European Union, economies are doing very well and expanding. As Smith writes in France in Crisis, in 2000, the average university graduate received his or her first full-time career path job at the age of 32, and they began a slow, arduous climb toward a good salary, which tends now to peak at the age of 55. Again, reason why people are leaving the country. Now that we understand what the problem is, let's see what the government has tried to do about it. The government has experimented with programs to alleviate the unemployment problem, but these attempts have been too little too late. Although the U.S. sometimes makes unsuccessful attempts to fix the policy problems, our system works extremely quickly compared to the French government. The French government both moves slowly and ineffectively because they're afraid of change. The first thing that they tried in the 1990s was the PEJ, or the Youth Unemployment Program. It was launched in 1997. Levy's 2001 article in the Journal of European Public Policy states that it was expected that the PEJ would create 350,000 positions by 2002. His book, Tocqueville's Revenge, reveals that under the provisions of the PEJ, the government pays 80% of the minimum wage, plus all Social Security contributions, leaving the participating employer with only 20% of the cost. The idea was, since the employers had less cost, they would hire more people. But this didn't work. The next thing that they tried was the CPE in 2006, which means the First Employment Contract. NAB's summer 2006 article in Social Policy discusses that the basic principle of the CPE would make it easier for young people to be fired without just cause. Workers under the age of 26 could be fired at any time during their first 2 years of employment without needing to provide any justification or compensation. Needless to say, this caused riots in France among the young people. Here's a picture of that. The government rationalized this initiative by arguing that employers would be likely to hire a greater number of young people, which in return would reduce overall unemployment. If the employers knew that they could fire these people at any time, they would be more willing to hire them. Again, it didn't work. Since both attempts at reform were bitterly unsuccessful, what does the new president of France have in mind for the future? Nicolas Sarkozy came to power in spring 2007, with one of his claims being a solution to the youth unemployment crisis. Just like many of us now, the French people were eager for change in the 2007 presidential election. Nicolas Sarkozy is reforming the labor system. According to David Howarth, in a February 14, 2008 article in the Journal, Sarkozy plans to end the 35-hour work week. China View reported on May 7, 2007, that Sarkozy would create a plan for employers to boost overtime pay by 25%. This would, in turn, make people more efficient and give them more money. An excellent idea. But it's meeting resistance because people like their time off. Sarkozy also wants to bring unemployment to reasonable levels. Howarth also reports in that article that Sarkozy established a committee of French and foreign experts to assess the French system and come up with proposals for reform. Sarkozy wants to liberate the French economy from its own binding regulations and rules in order to encourage economic growth. Sarkozy has the potential for great reform, but he is meeting great resistance because, as I previously stated, France is very resistant to change. The unemployment crisis has devastated the youth population. The government's attempts to suppress or fix the problem have not been sufficient. We've discussed that the rate of youth unemployment is at 30% and youth underemployment is at 75%. And the government has attempted 2 major programs that were ineffective. The new president, Nicolas Sarkozy, wants to make a change in the French economy, but continues to meet stark resistance from his countrymen. It is sad that in today's world, French youth do not have a voice in their own society. They are the future, yet they have no control over their present.